So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And as I mentioned, attendees are muted. If you have any questions, please type those in on the chat box on your right-hand side panel of the GoToMeeting. But please note that some of your questions may be answered as we go through our presentation today. And you can feel free to contact us after the presentation is over. But good morning, everyone. This is Christina Newton. I'm Assistant Director at the Virginia Association of Museums. I hope you're enjoying your coffee today as we go through our coffee and conversation about conservation, as we talk about some exciting projects that may be of benefit to you in your collections care efforts. I'm here this morning with Tiffani Emig, Program Coordinator of the well-known CAP program, and Tiffany's with us today.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm also here with my colleague, Dana Matheny, VAM's Communications Coordinator.
Good morning.
And Tiffani will be presenting shortly, and Dana will be assisting us with our chat questions. And there we are. So there's our contact information and links in our webinar that you can look at later as we complete the presentation. I do want to note, might be a little confusing, our GoToMeeting account is in our director's name. So in your chat box, it'll say Jennifer Thomas, but it is me, Christina. So I did want to point that out because that was a little confusing. Again, just as we have folks joining us, if you have any questions, please note those in the chat room. And as Dana will be looking at those, if you're having problems with audio, you can check the settings in the top box on your GoToMeeting, or you might need to log off and then download and run the program for a better connection. And again, there was a little bit of lag time between what people were seeing and hearing. Hopefully that won't be happening today. But today we're going to be sharing some exciting news about our respective conservation programs, which we hope you'll take advantage of. I'll be speaking first about our Top 10 program, and then I'm going to switch over to Tiffani to talk about FAIC's CAP program. And then last 10 minutes or so will be dedicated to some question and answer. Happy to see so many familiar faces, participants from the past, as well as new organizations joining us on the webinar today. So thanks so much for joining us. So I wanted to start out with just a very short description of the background of our Top 10 program before we launch into the changes. Our Virginia's Top 10 Endangered Artifacts program is VAM's public-facing program dedicated to promoting awareness of the importance of collections care that museums and collecting institutions are committed to. It was originally featured as a component of our Virginia Collections Initiative project that was funded through an IMLS statewide implementation grant that we received in 2011 and 13. And we were inspired by such successful efforts as Preservation Virginia's Most Endangered Historic Site program and the National Trust for Historic Preservation's Most Endangered Places program. And since our start in 2011, we're proud that the Top 10 has been replicated in other states like Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Colorado, and most recently, Wyoming. Over the last 6 years, over 100 sites of all sizes across Commonwealth of Virginia and D.C. have benefited from increased press coverage, recognition. They've gained new volunteers and supporters, and most importantly, they've used the recognition to raise funds to conserve their artifacts. And as you'll see here, this is a image of the from the Virginia Transportation Museum, one of our first success stories from the first year that they received a $10,000 grant from Trains Magazine to update their locomotive. So there's been a lot of wonderful success over the years, and but we're really excited about where we're going to take the program in the future. So we're currently working on updating our records on progress that's been made over the past. Nominated and honored items like here, the Virginia Historical Society's Hofbauer murals are some of the treasures that's been featured and that have made incredible progress. So we'll continue to capture these updates on our blog, and if you happen to be with an organization that's participated in the past, we would love to hear where you stand in the progress of your nominated or honored artifact. But as I mentioned, this year is going to be a little different as we celebrate our 50th anniversary. And so we're tying a lot of cool projects to this milestone, and in particular, the top 10 is part of that. So thanks to the support of the Blandford Ries Foundation, we will be providing conservation awards totaling $18,500 during this year's program in amounts from $500 to $5,000. So basically, each of the organizations chosen as a top 10 item this year will receive some level of support. And the foundation is named in honor of James Ries, who served as president of Mount Vernon for nearly 2 decades. So we're really excited about this opportunity that has been presented to us. So in the next few slides, I'm going to go over some of the new guidelines for participating. So we're going to start with the eligibility. So, and a lot of this information is on our website, and as I mentioned, this webinar is recorded, so you'll have an opportunity to go over this information more in depth or share it with your colleagues. So all nominating organizations must be located in Virginia or D.C., and participating in the program is now a benefit of membership in VAM, which was new last year. So if you're not sure if you're a member, just give us a call. Artifacts that are nominated must be of significance to your site, complement your mission, and objects on loan are not eligible. So this is a new component. And artifacts that are selected to be the top 10 honorees this year cannot be nominated in the future. But if you have nominated an item in the past and would like to renominate it, please feel free. And those institutions that are represented on the Independent Selection Committee are not eligible to apply. So the online form is going to open November 1st and be open through the 17th. So that will be the opportunity to apply and to submit your artifacts. The material submitted will be used for promotional purposes, so I really can't recommend enough to try to provide quality photographs, since these will not only be used by the selection committee to select the top 10 artifacts, but they're going to be used for press purposes and on the online voting page. So you may need to find some assistance to help you with that. The artifacts will need to be assessed if not already done so. So that's new. And we're not asking that this needs to be done by everyone submitting, but those final 10 items that make the next round of the top 10, you'll need to have your item assessed, but this could be done as part of your conservation project. We also have a new awards agreement, and we'll ask for a brief progress report, but you have until the end of next year to complete that, and it's a very simple form. So don't be worried about that. And those items again are linked here in the presentation, and they're also on our website. But now we get to the fun part, the awards. So the selection committee is comprised of partner organizations from the Library of Virginia, Preservation Virginia, the Virginia Conservation Association, the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, and then we have private conservators represented. And they will review the applications up front and then select the top 10 items, which will then complete in the online public voting competition. So in contrast to past years, where we promoted everyone that submitted items and then the committee narrowed down the top 10, and so that's the big change. So we'll promote the only 10 artifacts in the public voting competition this year. So those items that are selected to proceed to the online voting competition, where our kind of in the past our Get Out the Vote mantra has kind of been part of our resources and that we've talked about and our publicity and promotion. This really comes into play more than ever because those public votes can equate to dollars. So this is really where your communications and outreach efforts will be important, as the site receiving the most votes will receive a conservation award of $5,000, and then the runner-up will receive an award in the amount of $4,000. Following that process, the selection committee will come back together after the close of the online voting to choose recipients of 2 conservation awards in the amount of $3,000 and $2,000 at their professional discretion. The remaining 6 participants will be granted conservation awards in the amount of $500 plus another $250 toward professional development training, which can be used to attend VAM programs or other opportunities. So this is kind of really, without a doubt, an unparalleled conservation opportunity to take place in Virginia. So if you've participated in the past, you've recognized that we're a little off schedule. So we have a brand new timeline. So what you should be doing right now is thinking about what's that one item that would really inspire the public and your supporters to vote for you. So as I mentioned, the form will open on November 1st and run through the 17th. Then we'll compile those applications. The selection committee will meet in December. And so we'll notify everyone around December 7th and 8th. And if your item is selected, you really need to be prepared to kind of hit the ground running on your communication strategy, because December will be the time to prepare for the public voting campaign in mid-January. A couple other new dates that we're really excited about, or opportunities. First, we are going to hold a reception that's going to coincide with our Museum Advocacy Day, and that's going to be on February 21st. The reception will be at the Virginia Historical Society, and we're really hoping to engage with legislators and have you, participants, engage with your legislators to really broaden the message of the importance of conservation. And then, of course, we'll be recognizing the top 10 participants or honorees at our conference. So that'll be during our luncheon on Monday, March 12th. So kind of to wrap up, I pulled together kind of a top 10 list of the new elements about this year's program. So artifacts must be in your stewardship and not on loan. Only the top 10 artifacts narrowed down by the selection committee will be featured in the online voting competition. The new platform is going to allow for only one vote per IP address per day, and we're hoping that this will create fairness. The People's Choice Awards will now feature monetary awards, with the two items receiving most votes receiving $5,000 and $4,000 awards respectively. So the selection committee will allocate the remaining awards. The top 10 will be honored, as I mentioned, at Advocacy Day and at our conference. Also new is that artifacts must be assessed by the end of the project if they're not already, if you've not already done so. We'll have a short progress report that'll be due by the end of next year, just to indicate where your award was spent and the progress of your conservation or preservation progress. And I'll note on that progress report, an awards letter of agreement, it does say that the monetary awards must be used for the stewardship of the artifact and not things like events. And then artifacts selected for top 10 cannot be nominated again. So those are kind of those major points about the new changes to the program this year. So at this point, that kind of wraps up my presentation, and I'm going to turn over the screen to my colleague Tiffani to talk about the CAP program. So I'm going to ask you to hold on just a little bit as we change screens.
Okay, how does that look?
I can see it.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you, Christina. So I'm very excited to be with you all today to talk about the Collections Assessment for Preservation program, which to me sounds like the exact opposite of the Top 10 program. So we're looking at two extremes right now. And I should start by saying that the Collections Assessment for Preservation program is administered by the Foundation of the American Institute for Conservation of Historic and Artistic Works, which I will refer to as FAIC. It takes about a half hour to say the full name, and that is the organization that I work for. But we do so in cooperation with the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So this is a federal program. And is open to museums around the country. What is CAP? It is a program that supports general conservation assessments for small and mid-sized museums. And so your next question should be, what's a general conservation assessment? And that is a review of all of your museum's, the way that your museum touches on collections care. So your collections, your buildings, the building systems, such as your HVAC system that serve your building, as well as all of the policies and procedures that you have in place related to collections care. And the goal is that by looking at all of these things together at once from a really high level, you can determine your greatest needs for collections care. So what can you be doing to better care for your collection? The CAP process is a team one, and by team I think of it in two sections. One, your internal team, which would be your staff, and by staff I mean not just the typical folks that you think of when you think of collections care, your curators or registrar, but also your leadership at your organization, your CEO or executive director, and folks like your cleaning staff, your maintenance staff, your security team. All these people have important roles in the protection of your collection, and so we want them involved in the process as well. Another part of your internal team is your board of directors, and we think it's really important that a board is involved in the process of collections assessment. We want them engaged from the beginning because we want their viewpoint, but we also want them invested in the process so that they respect the results when they are finished. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then externally, you have two outside consultants, a collections assessor and a building assessor. The collections assessor is usually a conservator, not always, but most of the time. And the building assessor could be anyone from an architect to an engineer, or in a case of a historic structure, we would want someone in historic preservation. Sometimes we have landscape architects at certain sites, but someone who's going to be looking at your collections care from a structural or architectural viewpoint. And then the final product of the CAP assessment is a report written by your assessors that has recommendations on how you can improve your collections care. I wanted to share this little flowchart of the CAP process because the process takes about a year after application. So museums who are selected to participate in CAP, and we usually have, it depends on the year, I expect to have around 75 museums around the country participate this year. Those museums will work with them to help them select their assessors. And museums get to choose the assessors that they want to work with. We think it's important that you are able to identify someone who not only has expertise in an area that matches your collections, but also that you get along with and you have a good personal connection with and can have some good rapport with. After that, we would provide you with a site questionnaire, which is just a little worksheet full of questions asking you for more information about your collections, your site, your staff, any particular concerns you have, and we send that to your assessors to give them a little bit of background information. We then ask you to schedule a phone call with your assessment team, and that phone call is a way for everyone to get to know each other and to begin planning for the site visit. That 2-day site visit is really the heart of the assessment. So that's a 2-day period where both assessors come to your site. They meet with your internal team, all those people we talked about before, and tour your sites. They want to see everything that holds collections at your site. So that would be all of the exhibition spaces, all of the storage spaces. If you have off-site storage, they're going to want to see that. They're going to want to crawl around your roof and look in closets and walk around the outside and get dirty. Because the goal is for them to really look at all of the factors that are influencing your collection. They then leave, go back home, and work together to create the CAP report, which you have a chance to review and provide feedback on before they submit a final. Then we hope you will begin implementing their recommendations. And then a year after your site visit, there's a structured follow-up phone call, which gives you a chance to check in with your assessors and to, after trying to implement certain recommendations from their report, you may find you have additional questions or need clarification on something, or for whatever reason, just want to check back in. So that's an opportunity to do that. I wanted to give you a few ideas of things that you may see in a CAP report. So these are some recommendations I pulled from actual reports. Shouldn't be considered a single example of a single executive summary. They're much more complex than this, but I just wanted to give you some suggestions of what you might see. One thing I just wanted to point out is that we do ask your assessors to prioritize the recommendations that they provide, so that you're not just looking at a whole laundry list of things and you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? We want them to say, hey, if you can only do one thing right now, here's what you should do. Some assessors write the report the way it's shown, with critical, high priority, medium priority, low priority needs. Others may use a different type of prioritization, like short-term versus long-term, or 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. But we do want to point out that we think that is important. So an example of a critical need may be that you need to develop a written collections management policy. Maybe you're a small historical society and you're just starting to get started on formalizing policies, and so they may suggest that the best thing you can do is to just start with your policy development. A high priority need may be caulking window gaps. Medium priority may be reducing UV exposure to your collections by installing UV filters over light fixtures or rotating the items on display. And we've seen, so these are all smaller and low cost recommendations, but we've seen certainly larger recommendations, such as installing air filtration systems in HVAC systems, or replacing roof units, or doing some major structural work on site. So you can see, and in most reports there are small suggestions of things that you can do in a short time period, as well as larger recommendations of things that you would certainly need to fundraise for. So how can CAP help your museum? I think first and foremost that it can provide a path forward. I used to work for a small museum in Pennsylvania, and I know what it's like. I was the curator of collections there, and I know what it's like to walk into your office every day, be surrounded by a backlog of objects that need to be processed, have the phone ring, be required to take folks on a tour of your exhibitions, and be running and just kind of being reactive. And the great thing about CAP is it forces you to kind of stop, pull back, and look at the things that you could be doing on a high level to protect your collection, so that you're being a little more proactive. CAP can also show an evidence of a need for grant funding. We see a lot of museums using their CAP report as backup attachments to future grant submissions. So we can all go to a granting agency and say, hey, I really want money for new shelving in my museum. But it's a little different when we say, I really want money for new shelving in my museum, and I brought in these 2 outside assessors, and they told me that one of the most important things that we need to do to protect our collections is to get new shelving. It just gives it a little bit more weight. So CAP can also help provide an outside perspective. I hope none of you are in this situation, but I hear tell that sometimes professionals in museums can make suggestions to their leadership, and they aren't necessarily taken into account right away. But then all of a sudden, sometimes when an outsider comes in, an outside professional or consultant comes in and makes the exact same recommendation, all of a sudden it gets some weight. So CAP can be helpful in convincing boards that that the items on the to-do list are indeed important. And CAP can finally just help improve community support. So similar with the Top 10 program, showing that you're committed to the improvement of your collections and that you're going through this year-long process can just show how committed you are and help to gain additional community support. I want to point out really quickly what CAP does not do. So unlike the Top 10 program, it does not provide traditional funding to institutions. We do not provide funding for any implementation. That CAP report can be used as a tool for fundraising, but the program doesn't provide any funding. And CAP also does not provide treatment or any item level surveys or anything other than this general conservation assessment. So it's really looking more at preventive conservation than in individual item by item conservation recommendations. Now is the important thing, eligibility. So smaller mid-sized museums of any kind are eligible for CAP. I know that the terms small and mid-size are very generic, and so it can be a little bit difficult to tell if you fit into that category. Generally, we ask you to think about your collections, where they are, where they're stored, and your site or sites, and think about whether they can be assessed in a 2-day period. Again, that's not super clear, but if you have questions about whether you are small or mid-sized, you can contact us and we'll talk you through it. The museum has to be organized as a nonprofit or a unit of non-federal government, has to be located in the US, which you all are clear of. It has to be organized on a permanent basis for educational or aesthetic purposes. You have to own tangible objects and make them available to the public. I want to point out that some programs require you to be open to the public a certain number of days per year, and this program does not require that. We just have to show that you have some commitment to making your collections available to the public through exhibition or research. And then you have to have at least 40 hours of staff time per week committed to the museum. And that could be 1 full-time staff person, it could be 2 part-time staff people, it could be 4 volunteers that volunteer 10 hours a week. We can come up with those 40 hours in a lot of different creative ways. But we just want to be able to show that you have the manpower on your, or women power, on your staff to be able to implement the recommendations that come out of the CAP process. Okay, time to get to the fun part, money. So this is a little bit more complicated than a typical grant in that CAP provides allocations for your assessors, and the allocation amount per assessor varies based on the size of your institution. So let's say that your institution has an annual budget of less than $250,000. You would receive $3,900 per assessor, so a total of $7,800 to pay your assessor for the process. The tricky part is that assessors are all independent contractors. They all have careers outside of CAP. CAP is something they usually do in addition to a lot of other projects. And so they already have their own fees established. So there's no set fee that a CAP assessor would charge your institution. A lot of times we see something like this sample cost that I have put together here, which is completely made up, but your CAP assessor may say to you, my professional fee is that $3,900, and so your allocation through the CAP program will pay for my professional fee. However, I am going to need your assistance in providing help with travel. So in order to get to your site, whether that's for transportation, for hotel, and food for the 2 days, that's what I'm going to need you as an institution to pay for. So they may estimate those costs to be $500, let's say. Then their total fee would be $4,400. The CAP allocation would pay for $3,900, and then your museum would be responsible for the remaining $500. So there generally is a cost to participate in CAP. This year I went back and took a look, and it looks like on average our museums this year are paying around $700 total, so around $350 per assessor to participate in the program. But individually, museums could be paying anywhere from $0 to $4,000. And I say that because there are a lot of factors that play into the actual cost of participation. One of them is location of your museum. Are there assessors located near you who don't have to fly, for example, from California up to Alaska in order to get to your museum? Luckily, you all are in Virginia and are very centrally located to a lot of our assessors, so there are a lot of options there. But I just wanted to make sure it's clear that there's a big range. It's hard for us to articulate exactly what the cost may be for you to participate. But you do, if you remember, do get to select your own assessors. And we encourage museums to, early on in the assessor selection process, begin talking to the assessors about the budget that they have for participation in the program. And they may use that as a factor in choosing an assessor. So our next program cycle, our applications open November 1st. November 1st is a big day for all of you, it looks like. The good news is that CAP applications are open for a few months, so they close on February 1st. My number one recommendation, if you're interested in participating in CAP in 2018, I would strongly encourage you to apply as early as possible. We do look at the order in which applications are submitted when we are making our selections. So those who apply early do receive priority consideration. You can apply by visiting the website, conservation-us.org/cap/apply. And I also wanted to mention we are hosting a webinar on next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Called Is CAP a Good Fit for My Institution? It will be partially a reiteration of what you've heard today, but at the end of the webinar, we will take a few minutes to talk about some tips for applying. So looking at some details of the application and giving you some heads up on how to put yourself in a great position to be accepted. So if you are interested, you can register for that on our website as well. And with that, that is all I have. I'm going to actually switch the screen back over to Christina here. Or at least attempt to do so.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully you are now seeing my screen again. This is just a little wrap up. I want to thank you, Tiffani, so much for sharing information about the CAP program. That's a wonderful opportunity and really amazing support. And a number of our members I know have been CAP assessors, so you may find some friends, some colleagues helping you if you apply.
That's great.
But I just wanted to wrap up with kind of a couple final slides and answer some questions. We're really, we ran through our presentation, so we have plenty of time for questions. But this is the website that I hope you will visit if you haven't already, VAtop10artifacts.org. Will send you to all of this information and more, and particularly those forms that I mentioned earlier. And our contact information so that you can reach us at your convenience if you have any more questions. November 1st is looming deadline, but it'll be an exciting deadline. So please feel free to reach out to Tiffani and I if you have questions about our respective programs. But I know I saw a few questions pop up on chat, so maybe we can get to that. Dana, what did folks have for us? And let me unmute you. That might help.
Christina, I'll jump in. I'm looking at the questions here, so
Okay.
it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a little
I'll just
problem.
read them.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So Gretchen Pendleton asks, when you say on loan, I assume for the eligibility requirements, do you mean incoming loans or also your object currently on loan elsewhere?
Oh, yes, that's a good question. Thanks, Gretchen. It would, if you have an item that is in your care and it's a loan at another location, you could certainly nominate it. You would want to probably have it back at your site, but it's really, we would not be any incoming loans from another institution that's owned. I put kind of air quotes around loan, owned by another institution. That would not qualify. This was quite a conversation with our selection committee. With basically items. Every museum collecting institution has a number of items that has probably been in your care, ownership, as it were, of your institution for years, but you may not have any documentation, but you know that it has been there for like 30 years. So you can't really state or show clear title to that. That was something that we were going to ask for originally. But really, it's anything that belongs to another organization that just happens to be on loan to you, that would not apply. But then if you have an item that is on loan elsewhere, that would apply if it's yours, but you might want to have it at your site just so that there's not a confusion as to the promotion aspect of it. That was kind of a long answer, I know.
Okay, and it looks like John Long asked, do you anticipate that this will be a repeating program or will it be a one-time deal?
Yeah, that's another excellent question. Thanks, John. We are this level of grant support is really just for this year, and thanks for this through that contribution through the Blandford Ries Foundation. We are, though, actively fundraising to hopefully provide this type of support in future years, but right now this level of support is in celebration of our 50th anniversary. So if it's something that you're interested in taking advantage of, I would participate this year.
Great. And then Stephanie Gardner asked, must an item have high Virginia provenance in order to be considered?
Oh, that's a good question. No, it's we did talk about whether the item needed to be significant to Virginia, but we decided that that would not be a requirement because there are so many diverse museums in our state, and so it's really just an importance to your mission. More so than the state. So hopefully that clarifies that. And yeah, thank you so much, Stephanie, Gretchen, and John. Those are great questions. And thank you, Tiffany, for your help.
Of course.
Were there any other questions that you guys may have? And I'm looking at chat now. Greg, hi, thank you for joining us. I see you have a question. What are the reasons for making the changes to the top 10 and this year? And it really, that's a good question. It revolves around the contribution. So, for example, the new timeline and changes to selecting, kind of narrowing down the nominees to 10. We thought that would be more succinct marketing direction for engaging the public for these in the voting process. Instead, for example, in past years, we've had, say, 40 different items for the public to look through. And that was a good plan, especially when the program in the past 6 years has revolved around promotion and kind of more of outreach than fundraising. So now that we're hoping to really engage more people in this voting process, we thought it would be best for the committee to manage we're expecting a higher turnout of participants, of submissions. So they will weed through that, narrow down to the 10 items, and then those 10 items will be presented to the public. And also the dispersing this wonderful contribution that we have. So, but we think that we will continue, whether there are awards in the future. We do believe that we will maintain that aspect of the program where the committee makes the selection to the 10 items. So that and this timeline. We kind of have to work the timeline around our other programs, like our conference and workshop. But hopefully this will, so we know we're going to be busy this winter, but it'll be exciting to coincide with our Museum Advocacy Day and conference and kind of boost those programs. So hopefully that answered that question. Well, is there anything else, Tiffany, that you may wanted to say about the CAP program while we are online before we leave?
No, I encourage anyone who may be interested, either this year or in future years, to give us a call or shoot us an email if you have any questions at all about your eligibility or the application process. We love talking to people and helping, so don't be afraid to reach out.
That's wonderful. Yes, we're huge fans of the CAP program, and really encourage our members to take advantage of this amazing opportunity that's out there. But that looks like we're wrapping up our webinar today. I want to thank Tiffani and Dana and everyone here that joined us. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to visit with you, and hope you have a great day and look forward to receiving your applications. So have a great day, everyone. And
I have my question in.
Oh, it looks like
everyone.
May? I did have a question. Couldn't find out how to get it in.
Oh, May, yes. How are you? And please.
I'm fine.
What's the question?
Can I get it? Do I have time? Yes, quick
Sure.
question. Is this new CAP program like the circuit riders had in 2013? It sounds a little similar, but extensions, because this is a federal grant.
So I don't know about the circuit riders. I'm just not familiar with that. I'm
that,
sorry.
Jennifer?
That was our program. We still have that program. It's kind of on the back burner right now, but it is similar to the CAP program, but not as extensive. So the CAP program would certainly be like the next level.
Okay, this is a federal grant, which is normally a lot more intensive also, right?
I'm so glad you asked that. So typically a federal grant would be a lot more intensive.
Yes.
Because we're not a grant, and we are, by administering it through FAIC instead of through IMLS, we get around some of that. So our application, for example, is a quick fill in the blank. We asked you at the end to take a survey that's just a couple of questions about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think this was helpful or not? But we don't, there's no long grant report, there's no, formal writing process. The application doesn't have an essay or any sort of big writing component. It's a lot of just fill in the blank, tell us, how many staff members do you have? 1, 2, 3, whatever. It's pretty simple. And if you're curious, on that website, the conservation-us.org/CAP, I would add, you'll find there's an apply tab, and under apply, you'll find a sample application. And little tip, that sample application is going to look a heck of a lot like the real application that comes out November 1st. So if you're curious about the application, just go online, check it out, or you can always shoot me an email and I'll send it to you in an email or however you prefer.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was a wonderful webinar. That's my second one.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, May. That's a great question. Well, I think that wraps up our program today. Thanks again for everyone. Hope you have a wonderful day. And again, look forward to getting your applications in. So take care, and thanks from VAM and FAIC.
Thank you.